Today on MuscleCar, it's time for some cutting and welding. Tommy gives the Buick bumpers some nip-tuck. Then Rick gets a handle on things. Plus, Dodge finds a new home for the 65 Hemi.
Hey guys, welcome to MuscleCar. Today we're back on Blue Collar Buick where we're going to do some custom body mods that won't cost you much more than your time.
The Buick is a low buck project, so we've got to get creative when it comes to jazzing it up. So it's time to break out the grinders and welders. After picking up our 73 Century from a salvage yard, we replaced the roof and fixed some rust spots. Once the Buick 455 came back from the machine shop, I assembled it while Rick put a shift kit in the Turbo 350. With the drivetrain well on its way, we can turn our attention to appearance. Part of the problem with mid-70s cars were changes brought on by new government safety regulations.
And big ugly bumpers are one example of this. Now, prior to the urethane bumpers coming out in the late 70s, these monstrosities were the norm, and they're not cool at all. But we're going to fix that by shaving it, narrowing it, and tucking it tighter to the body for a cleaner, more modern look. But before we do anything, we'll knock those rusty nuts loose and get the specimen up on the table. Now we figure tucking the bumper in a total of 4 inches is going to give us the look that we're after. Now 4 inches may seem like a lot until you start looking at how this bumper is actually mounted. Because we can achieve 2 inches right there just by drilling a hole in the bottom of that shock, collapsing it back, and re-welding it. An additional 2 inches can easily be had right in here just by chopping out some of these guts, taking this mounting plate, re-welding it to the back, hanging our bumper back on it. No problem. We're reusing bits and pieces of this assembly, so I got to be careful taking it all apart. When drilling through the shock, wear eye protection because they are pressurized with really smelly gas. This is going to get welded later, so I'm going to clean it up now while it's still easy to get to. With the pressure released out of the shocks, the plasma makes short work of the brackets. Next comes the bumper side of the brackets. By chopping the excess off of these, we're moving that bumper back over 1.5 inches in one swipe. After cleaning the slag off both sides with the grinder, I can line the brackets back up, tack them in, and then we'll set the bumper back in place to see how many problems we've created. We got problems, dude.
It's hitting, ain't it?
Yep, it's hitting right. Here, set it down for a second. It's hitting these brackets right here, dude. I ain't chopping them off.
You want me to cut it?
No, I can cut it.
I won't cut it.
Why? I haven't cut everything else.
Okay, you cut it.
Hey guys, welcome back. Got all that metal chopped out of the way and the bumper should slide right on. We'll give it a shot anyway. Cool, looks good. Let's drop it, check it out. Well, it does look a whole lot better, but dude, these have got to go.
Man, that's no lie. And this rubber impact strip's got to go too.
Yeah, I know there's bolts behind there to hold this whole mess together, but we can shave those.
That's not too big of a deal. And while we're at it, we can shorten the side of the bumper up and move it in some. That'll help a bunch.
Yeah, it works for me. Let's snatch this dude off of here and chop it up.
Good deal.
After pulling off the trim, we realized these mounting bolts also hold the bumper to the inner structure. No big deal. I'll clean them and plug weld them back up so we don't lose any strength. Man, we've been wanting to get rid of these bumperettes since the first time we saw this car, and good riddance. A few licks of the grinder and my welds are clean, and we're ready for more chopping. If you're planning on having your bumpers re-chromed, take a piece of advice from our friends over at Advanced Plating. Don't grind down your own welds, let them do it. It'll save you some work and save you some money in the long run. But for budget reasons, we're going to paint ours, so it's no big deal.
Rick's got the bumper looking a whole lot better, but by no means are we done. We still got to trim 3/4 of an inch off both ends to tighten up the gap. That may not seem like a whole lot, but it's the little details like that that add up to make a big attitude change. I want to tuck in each end 3/4 of an inch, so I'm using, you guessed it, 3/4 inch masking tape as a guide. Using a combination of different width tape, you can easily measure out consistent sections of whatever it is you're hacking on. I've swapped from the cutting disc to a flap wheel to bevel the edges for better weld penetration. Well, that brought it in 3/4 of an inch, but we still want to clip its wings and also shorten up the side about 4 inches, but that requires a little more cutting. I'm reusing the back part of this piece, but I'll get the excess first. This is part of the piece I just cut off, trimmed to fit. I'm filling in the gap with some 1/8 inch plate I already shaped. Next comes the big piece. Over 4 inches is coming out of here. Just like before, I'm capping it with a piece I just cut off the end. Now that's a real change. This is a big chunk of metal that I cut out of there, but anything less just wouldn't have got the job done. The front end is definitely looking a lot better, but the car still got some areas that could use some improvement. So while I finish up the front bumper, Rick's gonna show you what we've got planned for the doors.
Now when you look down the length of the car, what do you see? Well, I see some pretty stylish body lines and some pretty dated door handles. Now GM used the same ones through the 70s and most of the 80s, so they're pretty much a dime a dozen. But Blue Collar, well, this thing's got to stand out from a crowd, so those have got to go. Now you'd think that we would just shave them off and be done with it, but for you guys that have had shaved door handles before, you already know what a pain they can be. Besides, you're going to be in at a good $200 or more for solenoids and the hardware to get them to work. So we're just going to swap ours out for a little more aesthetically pleasing ones. And thanks to a trip to a self-service wrecking yard, these ran us less than $50. The first step is to strip both sets of handles. I didn't get keys with the new handles, but on the bright side, the lock cylinders are cheap and easy to replace. Now with that out of the way, we can set the new piece in. I cut that out so that these tabs here can drop into place because you have to be real careful where your edges are to make sure they're not going to interfere with anything on the back of the door, namely your jamb. Just pay attention to how this thing is clocked on the door. Make sure that it lines up nice with your body lines, and also don't forget about any extra holes in there. Make sure you cut your panel out low enough to allow for that to get eliminated. When I cut these out at the wrecking yard, I made sure to give myself plenty of extra sheet metal. It's always better to have too much than to come up short and have to scab something together. Using the new sheet metal as a template, I can scribe out the section of the Buick that needs to go. I'm using a combination of tools to get this job done. Body saw, grinder, cut-off disc, carbide bits, whatever it takes. Just make sure to do plenty of test fitting as you go. Once you're happy with the fit, strip the paint out of the way and weld it in. The handle's in and looking pretty cool, but you still have to get the thing to work. And that's where it's real important when you choose which handles you're going to install in your car. Make sure that the handle that you have, see how this one here has a lever that pushes down, and make sure that's compatible with your latch. Now these latches here have another lever which needs to go down to get the door open. So it's going to be pretty simple to hook up. I'm starting by putting the original rod into the new handle. Once it's set in place, I'll mark the length it needs to be to engage the original latch. The rod needs a stop to push on the lever, and I've got a low-tech solution. A washer welded in place should do the trick. I'll trim it to my mark and cross my fingers that parts from two cars made over 25 years apart will actually work together. All right, see if it works. Like butter. Now when the locks show up, I can build a linkage and get those working too. Now, I know they look a little bit funky right now, but that's only because they're white. The game plan is to shoot them body color and make them blend right in. By the time blue collar is done, you'll hardly even see them.
Coming up, the Hemi that ruled the strip in '65. Today's Flashback, a 1965 Dodge Coronet Superstock.
That thing got a Hemi?
Well, yes, it does. The year was 1965. Chrysler offered its infamous engine to the public for the very first time. To get one, though, you had to fork over an extra $1,800 and sign away your warranty.
That's because this engine was in full race tune, built to power Dodge's factory modified Superstock Coronet, a car designed with one thing in mind: to win at the strip.
Well, that's exactly what Harmon Friend was looking for back in '65, and he was one of the lucky few to get his hands on one.
The surge of power in this thing feels like you're getting shot out of a cannon.
He raced harm's way all over the Midwest, drawing a lot of attention with his roller skate wheelie bars. His goal was to break a record, and he promised his wife he'd sell the car as soon as he did.
The Hemi found its way into the Coronet when NASCAR banned the engine after Dodge used it to completely annihilate the competition in the '64 season. Chrysler packed up its things and poured all its resources into drag racing.
The Coronet was Dodge's new mid-size model and a perfect fit for a 426. Only 101 units were built to meet the NHRA quota. Dodge did everything they could to lighten up the car, while sticking to the new Superstock rules.
That meant no aluminum bodies or plexiglass windows. Dodge had a few tricks up its sleeve to get around that, like acid dipping the fenders and hood and using thinner glass for the windows.
Even the race Hemi got the weight loss treatment, with cast aluminum cylinder heads and a magnesium intake.
Then they went to work hitting the delete button. Inner headlights and right-hand wiper, delete. Rear seat, delete. Radio and heater, delete. Visors, dome light, coat hook, delete. They even got rid of the parking gear.
Yeah, and notice the funky shift pattern? Reverse, neutral, first, second drive. That's so you can manually upshift to drive without accidentally throwing it into reverse.
Plus, the tranny had a high stall torque converter to feed that RPM-hungry Hemi. The setup was nicknamed Dial-A-Win because it was so dang dependable on the track. Dodge dominated the strip that year, with Bob Harrop's Coronet winning the NHRA Nationals.
Harm raced his car for 4 years until he set an AHRA class record of 119 miles an hour at Norwalk Dragway. He kept his word and sold the car, never thinking he'd see it again. But history had something else in store.
Over a year ago, I got a phone call. And he says, "You don't know us. We know a little bit about you. We have your old race car." And I thought to myself, what?
The car had been found in a barn and bought by Danny Proctor, who had it restored by the guys at Pro Classics.
We started with a really big bucket of bolts and just really think we transformed it into something really nice after a year and a half of hard work.
Matt made sure it was returned to exact OE specs before he showed it to Harm.
I had tears in my eyes. The first time I walked up to it, I had tears in my eyes.
The car that cost him about $4,400 brand new? Yeah, well now this sucker's worth almost 200 grand.
See, I tell you, you shouldn't have sold this thing.
Up next, Rick finds out what the Buick has hidden under its hump.
Hey guys, welcome back. We got the front and sides looking pretty cool, but the back end will definitely still need some help. And these taillights I think are the ugliest I've ever seen, so they gotta go.
We've given it a lot of thought, and the design we came up with is going to give it some style, but it's going to require removing some metal here and adding some there.
The first things to go, the bumperettes. Yeah, we really hate these things. Next to go, this huge hump. Now humps can be good, but this ain't one of them. That hump was hiding a secret. What the heck is all this stuff? I don't know, but it's gonna go in the round file. With that out of the way, I can see what metal needs to be trimmed to match the new profile we have planned for the bumper. Now From the time we bought this car, we knew that the rear bumper had some fitment issues. Well, now you can see why. This sucker's been rear-ended at some point. Pretty good. That's a lot of movement. Well, when that happened, it bent the rear bumper out of shape. Now, we don't have any fancy pants tools around here to get this sucker pushed back out, so we're going to do it the same way you guys would do it at home. Take it off, chop it apart, and make it fit.
We got the bumper stripped down to just the chrome skin, marked the center, so now we're ready to cut this dude in half.
Hey, Tom, you got the brackets on. Let's see where we're at with this thing.
All right.
How's it look down there?
Much better, man.
Much better?
Much better.
I like this line right here.
Here on,
nice.
here on the corners, it looks good too. So.
Cool. Let's put a little piece in there and tack it in place. Work on the other side.
Yeah.
We're welding some temporary brackets in to hold the left side still while we get the right side lined up. It lined up pretty easy, so it's time to tack it all together, pull it off, and fill it in. Cutting off that hump left a pretty mean hole that needs to be filled. I formed some 1/8" plate to do the job. While I was finishing the bumper, Tommy's been extending the trunk lid. Our plan is to give the taillights a whole new outline, and these will give them a much sleeker look. Time for a test fit and a little preview of what the new back end is going to look like.
The changes we made today sure have improved the fit and finish and style of this old car. Not to mention it only cost us about 50 bucks for some door handles, some welding wire, and some cutoff wheels.
Now we do still need some lenses to fill in our newly restyled back end, and I have a couple ideas on how to build them, but for this week, we're all out of time. So until next time, we're out of here.